Emma hurried down the busy London street, her worn-hand bag pressed tightly against her side. The leather was cracked and faded from years of use, but it held everything important to her. Her wallet with just enough money for the week, Lucy's, school papers, and a small photo of her daughter smiling. Dark clouds were gathering above the tall buildings of the city. Emma could feel the first cold drops of rain touching her face as she walked faster. Her heart was beating quickly, not from the walking, but from worry. She was rushing to reach the community center before it closed at 5 o'clock. Her daughter, Lucy, only 8 years old with bright, curious eyes and messy brown hair, needed to be registered for the free after-school program. Emma had been planning this for weeks. The program would give Lucy a safe place to go after school, with help with homework and hot meals. Most importantly, it was free. Emma simply could not afford to pay for childcare, and Lucy was too young to be alone at home. Emma worked 2 jobs to make ends meet, and even then, money was always tight. During the day, she cleaned offices in the business district. She would arrive at 6 in the morning when the buildings were empty and quiet. She would vacuum carpets, empty trash bins, and clean windows until they sparkled. Her back often ached from bending and reaching, but she never complained. At night, she served coffee at a small cafe near the train station. The cafe was always busy with people rushing to catch their trains home. Emma would smile at tired commuters and make their coffee just the way they liked it. She would work until 8, sometimes not getting home until Lucy was already asleep. It was not easy being a single mother. Sometimes Emma felt so tired that she could barely stand. But every morning when she looked at Lucy's sweet face, she found the strength to keep going. She was determined to give Lucy the best life she could, even if it meant working every day without rest. As Emma walked down the street, the rain began to fall harder. The drops were getting bigger and colder. She reached into her bag for her umbrella, an old black one that had belonged to her grandmother. The umbrella had been with her through many storms, both real and in her life. But as soon as Emma opened the umbrella, a strong gust of wind caught it. There was a loud snap, and suddenly the umbrella was broken. The metal spokes were bent, and the fabric was torn. Emma looked at it sadly. She could not afford to buy a new one. The rain was now falling heavily, soaking through Emma's thin jacket. She looked round quickly and saw a bus stop with a small roof. She ran to it and pressed herself against the back wall, trying to stay dry. Her hair was already wet, and water was dripping from her clothes. As Emma stood there, she looked across the busy street through the rain. She could see people running with newspapers over their heads, trying to find shelter. Cars drove by slowly, their headlights cutting through the grey afternoon. Then Emma noticed an elderly gentleman on the other side of the street. He was struggling with several heavy grocery bags, and the rain was making everything worse. The bags looked ready to tear from the weight, and the man was having trouble holding onto them. His grey hair was completely soaked, and his clothes were getting wetter by the minute. The man's name was William, though Emma did not know this yet. He was trying to carry his weekly shopping home to his small flat above an old bookstore. At 72 years old, the heavy bags were difficult for him even on good days. In the rain, it seemed almost impossible. Emma watched William struggle for only a moment. She did not think about her own problems or the fact that she was already wet. She did not think about being late to the community center. She only saw someone who needed help, and that was enough. Without thinking twice, Emma ran from the safety of the bus stop. She crossed the busy street carefully, dodging puddles and cars. The rain hit her face and soaked through her jacket completely, but she did not care. Her shoes splashed through the water gathering on the sidewalk. "Let me help you with those," Emma called out to William as she reached him. She quickly grabbed 2 of his heavy bags before he could protest. The bags were full of groceries. Bread, milk, vegetables, and tins of soup. William looked up at Emma with surprise. His blue eyes were kind but tired. He had not expected anyone to stop and help him, especially not in this terrible weather. Most people were too busy trying to keep themselves dry. "Thank you, dear," William said with a gentle smile that reached his eyes. His voice was warm and grateful. "You are very kind, but you are getting soaked helping me." Emma smiled back at him, rainwater dripping from her hair. "That's all right," she said simply. "We all need help sometimes." In that moment, neither Emma nor William knew that this simple act of kindness would change both of their lives forever. William looked at Emma standing in the rain, water dripping from her hair and clothes. Her jacket was completely soaked, and she was starting to shiver from the cold. He could not bear the thought of this kind woman getting sick after she had helped him so generously. "You must come upstairs to my flat," William insisted, his voice full of concern. "I cannot let you catch cold after helping me like this. Please, it is the least I can do." Emma hesitated for a moment. She had been taught to be careful about going to strangers' homes. But looking at William's gentle face and kind eyes, she felt safe. Besides, she was completely wet and the community center would be closed by now anyway. "That is very kind of you," Emma said gratefully. "I suppose I could dry off for a few minutes." William led Emma to a small door next to the bookstore. He pulled out an old brass key and unlocked it. Behind the door was a narrow staircase with wooden steps that creaked softly as they climbed up to the second floor. As they walked past the bookstore windows, Emma could see inside. The shop looked quiet and dusty, with tall shelves full of books reaching up to the ceiling. Some books were stacked in piles on the floor, and others sat in neat rows waiting for customers who rarely came. The afternoon light coming through the windows was dim, making the whole place look forgotten and sad. William's flat was small but very cozy. There was a tiny kitchen with old-fashioned cabinets painted cream color. The living room had 2 comfortable armchairs covered in soft blue fabric, and a small table by the window. Everything was neat and clean, but Emma could see that it was the home of someone who lived alone. "Please, sit by the radiator," William said, pointing to one of the armchairs. "You need to get warm and dry." Emma sat down gratefully and felt the heat from the radiator warming her wet clothes. William busied himself in the kitchen, filling an old copper kettle with water and putting it on the stove. He took out 2 china cups with tiny pink flowers painted on them and placed them on a wooden tray. "These were my wife's favorite teacups," William said softly, handling them with great care. "She always said tea tastes better from proper china." While the water boiled, William found Emma a thick towel for her hair. She dried it as best she could and began to feel much better. The warmth of the radiator was helping her clothes dry, and the cozy flat made her feel safe and welcome. When the tea was ready, William brought the tray to the small table between the chairs. The tea was hot and strong, with just a touch of milk. Emma wrapped her hands round the warm cup and sighed with contentment. "This storm reminds me of the day I met my dear wife, Margaret," William said softly, looking out the window at the rain still falling heavily. His voice became distant, as if he was remembering something from long ago. "It was raining just like this, and she was waiting at a bus stop with a broken umbrella, just like yours." William's eyes moved to a photograph on the mantelpiece above, a small fireplace. In the picture was a woman with silver hair and a warm smile. standing next to a much younger William in front of the bookstore downstairs. They both looked so happy, with their arms round each other. "She passed away 6 months ago," William continued, and his eyes grew sad and distant. "Cancer. We fought it for 2 years. But in the end," his voice trailed off, and he could not finish the sentence. Emma felt her heart go out to this gentleman. She could see the pain in his eyes and the way his shoulders seemed to carry a heavy weight. She knew what it felt like to lose someone important, though in a different way. "I am so sorry for your loss," Emma said gently, her voice full of understanding. "I know how hard it can be to lose someone you love. I have been raising my daughter Lucy alone since her father left us 3 years ago." Emma had never told a stranger about her personal life before, but something about William made her feel comfortable. Maybe it was his kind eyes, or maybe it was the way he had welcomed her into his home without asking for anything in return. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both lost in their own thoughts. Outside, the rain continued to tap against the windows, but inside the small flat, it felt peaceful. Despite being strangers just an hour ago, they both felt less alone than they had in months. The quiet was broken only by the gentle sounds of their breathing and the occasional sip of tea. Sometimes the most important conversations happen in silence, when two people simply understand each other without needing many words. "The bookstore downstairs was our dream," William continued after a while, his voice stronger now. "Margaret and I bought it 30 years ago. We wanted to create a place where people could find stories and knowledge and feel welcome." His face grew worried as he spoke. "But fewer people buy books now. They read on computers and phones instead. The rent keeps going up every year, and I can barely afford to keep the lights on. I do not know how much longer I can keep it open." Emma understood struggle all too well. Every day was a fight to pay bills and take care of Lucy. Over the next
Sometimes
few weeks,
life
something
feels
wonderful
like one
began
storm
to
after
happen.
another.
Emma
She
started
said
stopping
thoughtfully,
by William's
"But
bookstore
maybe
with
that is
Lucy
when we
after
need each
school
other most."
instead of rushing straight home at first. It was just to say hello and thank William again for his kindness during the rainstorm. But soon, these visits became the best part of both Emma and Lucy's day. Lucy was amazed by the bookstore. She had never seen so many books in one place before. There were tall shelves that reached almost to the ceiling, filled with books of every size and color. Some books had bright pictures on their covers, while others had mysterious titles in golden letters. Lucy would walk slowly between the shelves, running her small fingers along the spines of the books, as if she was greeting old friends. William watched Lucy explore his shop with growing delight. For months, the bookstore had been so quiet that he sometimes forgot what it sounded like to have young voices and laughter filling the space. Lucy's excitement about the books reminded him why he and Margaret had fallen in love with this place so many years ago. Emma would help William with small tasks round the shop while Lucy looked at books. She would dust the shelves, range books that had been moved round, and help him organize the stacks of new books that arrived each week. It felt good to be useful, and she enjoyed spending time in the peaceful atmosphere of the bookstore. One afternoon, William noticed Lucy sitting in a corner with a picture book open in her lap. She was staring at the pages with a frustrated expression, her eyebrows pulled together in concentration. The book was about a little rabbit who went on adventures, but Lucy was having trouble reading the words. "Would you like me to read to you?" William asked gently, walking over to where Lucy sat. His voice was kind and patient, the same voice he had used when reading bedtime stories to his nieces and nephews many years ago. Lucy looked up at him with bright eyes and nodded eagerly. "Yes, please," she said in her small, sweet voice. "The words are too hard for me. William sat down in the chair next to Lucy and took the book from her hands. He began to read the story of the little rabbit, using different voices for each character. When the rabbit was excited, William's voice became high and happy. When the rabbit was scared, his voice became small and worried. Lucy giggled with delight at the funny voices. But William did not just read to Lucy. He also helped her learn. When they came to simple words, he would point to them and ask Lucy to try reading them herself. "Can you tell me what this word says?" he would ask, pointing to words like "and order or run." At first, Lucy found it difficult. She would sound out each letter slowly, sometimes getting confused. But William was always patient and encouraging. "That's right," he would say when she got a word correct. "You're doing wonderfully." When she made a mistake, he would gently help her try again soon. This became their daily routine. Every afternoon when Emma and Lucy came to the bookstore, William would sit with Lucy and they would read together. Emma would watch from across the shop, her heart filling with joy as she saw her daughter's confidence growing day by day. Lucy's reading improved quickly with William's help. Words that had seemed impossible just a week before now came easily to her. She began to recognize common words without having to sound them out. And her voice became more confident when she read aloud. "You know," Emma said one evening as she helped William organize some shelves, "this place could be wonderful for other children too. Have you ever thought about hosting story time?" Emma had been thinking about this idea for days. She had seen how much Lucy loved coming to the bookstore, and how much William enjoyed reading with her. There were so many children in the neighborhood who would benefit from this kind of attention and care. William looked uncertain about the suggestion. He put down the books he was holding and shook his head slowly. "I am not sure I would be very good at that," he said quietly. "I am just a quiet old man. I would not know what to do with a group of children." William had always been a shy person. Even when Margaret was alive, she had been the one who talked to customers and organized events. William preferred to stay in the background, organizing books and helping people find what they were looking for. "You are wonderful with Lucy," Emma encouraged him, her voice warm and convincing. "You have such a gift for making stories come alive. And there are so many families in the neighborhood who would love a safe place for their children." Emma knew there were many parents like herself who struggled to find good, affordable activities for their children. The community center had programs, but they were often full or too expensive. A free story time at the bookstore could be exactly what these families needed. William thought about Emma's words for several days. He watched how Lucy's face lit up when he read to her, and he remembered how much joy it brought him too. Maybe Emma was right. Maybe he could help other children the same way he was helping Lucy. The next Saturday morning, Emma and William worked together to create a small sign. In neat handwriting, Emma wrote, "Children's Story Time. All welcome. Saturdays at 10 a.m. They put the sign in the bookstore window, where people walking by could see it clearly. Emma was not sure anyone would come. It was a small sign on a quiet street, and they had not advertised anywhere else. But she hoped their small act of faith would be rewarded. Word about the story time spread quickly through the neighborhood, like ripples in a pond after someone throws a stone. At first, it was just the 5 families who had come that first Saturday morning, but those parents told their friends, who told their neighbors, who told people at the grocery store and the post office. Soon, families were coming to the bookstore regularly every Saturday morning. Some weeks there were 10 children. Other weeks there were 15. William had to arrange more chairs in a circle. Emma helped move some of the book displays to make more room for everyone to sit comfortably. The bookstore began to feel alive again in a way it had not for many months. The dusty silence was replaced by the sound of children's voices and parents chatting quietly while their little ones listened to stories. The afternoon sunlight that streamed through the windows seemed brighter somehow, as if it too was happy to see the old place being used and loved again. Emma watched all of this happening and began to have new ideas. She had always been good at seeing possibilities where others saw problems. One evening, as she and William were tidying up after a particularly busy story time, she turned to him with excitement in her eyes. "What if we asked people in the community to help?" Emma suggested, picking up some picture books that had been left on the floor. "Everyone has different skills they could share. Maybe we could make this place even better." William looked round his bookstore, trying to imagine what Emma meant. The walls definitely needed painting. They had not been touched in years and were looking tired and faded. The old carpet was worn thin in some places, and some of the shelves needed repair. "What kind of help do you think people would give?" William asked. Curious but still uncertain, he had lived quietly for so long that it was hard to imagine people wanting to spend their free time helping with his bookstore. Emma's mind was already racing with possibilities. "Well, we could put up notices round the neighborhood and see who responds. Maybe someone knows about painting, or fixing things, or organizing events." They spent the next evening writing simple notices on bright yellow paper. "Can you help our community bookstore?" The notices said. "We are looking for volunteers to help make our bookstore an even better place for families. Any skills welcome, big or small." Emma and William walked round the neighborhood together, putting the notices on community bulletin boards, in shop windows, and on lamp posts where people would see them. Emma felt nervous and excited at the same time. What if no one wanted to help? But what if lots of people did? The response was overwhelming and wonderful beyond anything they had hoped for. Within just a few days, people began stopping by the bookstore to offer their help. James, a man in his 40s who lived 3 streets away, came by on a Tuesday evening. He was a painter by trade and had noticed that the bookstore's walls looked like they needed attention. "I would be happy to freshen up these walls for you," he offered kindly. "I have some paint left over from another job, and I could do it over the weekend." Mary, a woman who worked at the local bank, stopped by during her lunch break. She had excellent skills with numbers and organization. "I could help you with the accounts and bookkeeping." She volunteered. "I know how hard it can be for small businesses to keep track of everything." Even teenagers from the local school wanted to help. A group of 5 young people, led by a girl named Sophie, came to the bookstore after school one day. "We're good with computers and social media," Sophie explained. "We could create pages on the internet to tell people about your bookstore and all the events you have." Emma was amazed by how generous people were with their time and skills. She organized all the volunteers and made sure everyone knew what needed to be done. James painted the walls a warm, welcoming cream color that made the whole bookstore look brighter and newer. Mary helped William organize his financial records and showed him how to keep better track of his income and expenses. The teenagers created beautiful pages on social media with photos of the bookstore and information about story time and other events. Soon, people from other neighborhoods were hearing about William's bookstore and coming to visit. But Emma's ideas did not stop there. She organized weekend markets outside the store, where local people could set up small stalls to sell homemade goods and crafts. Mrs. Johnson sold wear-upon scarves and mittens. Mr. Patel brought delicious homemade curry and samosas. Children could buy handmade toys and jewelry while their parents browsed for books inside. They started poetry nights for adults on Wednesday evenings. where people could read their own poems or listen to others share their writing, even quiet. Neighbors who rarely spoke to anyone found the courage to share their thoughts and feelings through poetry. Emma also created a pay-it-forward program so families without much money could still take books. People who could afford it would pay a little extra for their books, and that money would help families who were struggling financially. No child would ever have to leave the bookstore empty-handed. I never imagined this old place could bring so many people together, William said one evening, looking round at all the activity. The bookstore was busier than it had ever been. Even in the early days when he and Margaret had first opened it, Emma smiled as she watched Lucy. Help younger children choose books. Her daughter had grown more confident and happy, surrounded by this caring community. 6 months after that first rainy day, Emma stood outside the bookstore with William, watching as families began to arrive for their special anniversary celebration. The street looked completely different from that grey, stormy afternoon when they had first met. Today, the sun was shining brightly, and colourful banners hung across the front of the bookstore. Fluttering gently in the warm breeze, the banners had been made by children from the neighbourhood, each one painted with bright colours and cheerful messages. Some had pictures of books and rainbows, while others had handprints from the smallest children who came to story time. The whole street seemed to sparkle with joy and celebration. Children's laughter filled the air as families walked down the sidewalk toward the bookstore. Some children ran ahead of their parents, excited to see their friends and share in the festivities. Others walked hand in hand with their mothers and fathers, pointing at the decorations and talking excitedly about the party. Emma watched all of this with wonder in her heart. She could hardly believe how much her life had changed in just 6 months. The biggest change was that she had been able to quit her night job at the cafe near the train station. No more rushing from place to place, exhausted and worried about money. No more coming home so late that Lucy was already asleep. Now Emma managed all the community programs at the bookstore. She organized the story times, the weekend markets, the poetry nights for adults, and all the special events that had made the bookstore the heart of the neighborhood. The community had raised enough money through donations and book sales to pay Emma a proper salary for her work. More importantly than the money, Emma felt fulfilled in a way she had never experienced before. Every day, she could see that she was making a real difference in people's lives. She helped children discover the joy of reading, supported families who needed a safe place for their children, and brought neighbors together who might never have met otherwise. Emma no longer felt alone in her struggles as a single mother. She was surrounded by friends who cared about her and Lucy, who offered help when she needed it, and who celebrated her successes as if they were their own family. William had changed even more dramatically than Emma. The sadness that had filled his eyes for so many months after Margaret's death had been replaced by joy and purpose. His shoulders no longer carried the heavy weight of loneliness, and his smile came easily now, lighting up his whole face, though William still missed Margaret terribly, and probably always would. He no longer felt lost without her. He had found a new reason to get up each morning, a new way to honor her memory by sharing the love of books and stories that they had both cherished. The bookstore that had once been quiet and dusty was now alive with activity from morning until evening. Children came after school to do homework and listen to stories. Parents stopped by to chat with neighbors and find books for their families. Teenagers volunteered to help with events and learned about responsibility and community. "Service, look at that," William said to Emma, pointing across the crowd to where Lucy was sitting under a large tree that grew beside the bookstore. Lucy was reading aloud to a group of younger children who sat in a circle round her, listening with wide eyes and open mouths. Lucy had grown so much in confidence over the past 6 months. The shy little girl who had once struggled with simple picture books was now one of the best readers in her class. More than that, she had developed a love of helping others that reminded Emma of herself. She has become quite the little teacher. William continued, his voice full of pride and affection. Lucy was reading a story about a brave mouse who helped other animals in the forest, using different voices for each character just as William had taught her. Emma felt tears of happiness gathering in her eyes as she watched her daughter, Lucy, was surrounded by friends, confident in her abilities and generous with her knowledge. This was everything Emma had ever wanted for her child, to feel valued, capable and loved. That rainstorm was the best thing that ever happened to us, Emma said softly, wiping away a happy tear that had rolled down her cheek. William nodded thoughtfully, remembering that grey afternoon when his life had felt so empty and hopeless. Sometimes the storms in our lives bring us exactly where we need to be, he replied with the wisdom that comes from living through difficult times and finding meaning on the other side. As the celebration continued round them, with children playing games, parents chatting and laughing, and teenagers helping to serve refreshments, Emma realized something profound. That moment 6 months ago, when she had chosen to help a stranger instead of worrying only about her own problems, had changed not just their lives, but the lives of everyone in their community. They had created something beautiful from their individual struggles, a place where people cared for each other like family. Neighbors who had once been strangers now looked out for each other's children, shared meals when someone was sick, and celebrated each other's joys and successes. The rain from that first day had stopped long ago, but the connections it had helped create would last forever. Acts of kindness had grown into lasting friendships, and those friendships had grown into a true community where everyone belonged. In our darkest moments, acts of kindness can create unexpected connections that transform our lives and communities. Sometimes helping others is the best way to help ourselves, and together we can weather any storm. The end.